Hello, dear folks. Welcome to the show. Jack Chow on East West Show, the GNE TV. September is a month of beautiful days, bluer skies, more beautiful days and bluer skies. And the good news is that there are some bigger events going on regarding U.S.-China relationship. And we're talking about in China, there's going to be a military parade in Beijing on September the 3rd. And during the month of September, President Xi Jinping of China is visiting the United States, supposed to meet with President Barack Obama of the United States. The two big heads of the two great nations, are supposed to meet each other to see a future, a route leading to more exchange, more enhanced relationship. Or on the other hand, there are suspicions talking about this, lots of people saying negative things about the U.S.-China relationship. So is it a negative approach or is it a positive approach? Question is here that we are talking about. Joining me in the discussion is my good friend, an international relationship specialist, also an energy specialist, Mr. Drexel Smith. Welcome to the show, Drexel. Thank you very much for coming.
Always honored to be with you, Jack.
All right, and I'm always honored, especially honored, every time you come here.
Clearly, though, I want to correct the record that my expertise is not in international
relationship or to government, but to economic relations.
I know a little bit about energy
Okay.
and energy policy issues. And I have really avoided in our many, many meetings, Jack, discussions on policy because I only speak as the average American.
All right.
But I felt today, when we talked earlier, that the meltdown of the stock markets over the past 2 weeks, I think shows very graphically how important the relationship is between China and the United States. And
that's quite a take, yes.
I feel strongly, in my opinion, that we are talking about two great countries. We are talking about China, who has a rich 5,000-year recorded history that few of us in the West have taken the time to try to understand.
All right, less informed.
And I think we far too much focus on our differences and not enough on our together. I'd like to share a quick story that a professor in a class asked his class to take an examination. And what he did was to put a black dot on a piece of paper, and he handed the paper to every student with the black dot down. And at the appointed time, he asked the students to turn over the paper and write about what they saw.
The black dot.
The only thing on the paper was a black dot.
How big?
At the end, he read the responses. Every student wrote about the black dot.
Okay.
Nobody wrote about the white space.
Over the white space. White and open space, yeah.
The white space was 99% of the paper.
Maybe more.
And nobody saw it. They only talked about
the dot.
The dot. I think it's a telling message. We too often forget to take a step back and look at all of the areas that we are so connected. We talk a lot about our economies being connected. And too often even that becomes a negative discussion with one doing something or the other. And I would like to hope that we can begin to refocus the discussion on all the white space and all the very positive things about our relationship going forward.
Very excellently stated. I 100% agree with what you said just now. As a matter of fact, I could do more, no more. And to the audiences, this whole discussion is all called for because of one incident when Mr. Drexel Smith sent me a link to a speech made by the former Prime Minister of Australia, named Kevin Rudd.
Kevin Budd, yeah.
Kevin Budd, right? And he made some kind of heavy amount of philosophical points regarding U.S. and the China relationship. Well, of course, and that's why I called upon Mr. Drexel Smith to come over here, which was very gladly accepted by him. So that's why we're here talking about. Now, starting with that, your example of the white paper with a black dot, and his statement on the stage talking to a bunch of international, supposed to be think tankers, right? Altogether portrays one field only, that is the philosophical area. We're talking about conceptually U.S. and China, how they pose themselves, each other, right? Yet there are other layers like economical, layers like strategical, layers like cultural exchange, right? Layers like mutual cooperation, like that kind, right? How do you see those areas layer by layer? Do they point to the same direction as the white paper, as the speech on stage, please?
I think many of the topics that you touched, economic, cultural, environmental, trade.
Yes, strategic.
I think many of those topics, there is a great deal of cooperation between the U.S. and China. Where I think we exaggerate and make a really big deal of our differences are on some important topics. There are some issues of trade that I think we argue as opposed to finding common ground. We argue about some of the differences in the approach to government. We argue about who gets to control certain things. And as China has developed and gotten larger, by many in the West, and I'm going to refer to the West as more than just the United States.
The whole West.
Yeah, they begin to be very fearful of this sleeping giant that's now awakened.
Waking up, yeah.
And where are they going to go? And I think the cornerstone, now I'm going to offer just a Drexel Smith opinion. I think a cornerstone is a terrible lack of understanding and a terrible lack of willingness to understand the cultural history that is so different than the West, where I think it drives our language. Sometimes translation is not perfect. It drives differences in how we approach things. And in my personal opinion, it probably reduces down to different approaches to even government.
All right.
And I think that's where we begin to disconnect, and we begin to be suspicious, we begin to lack trust, and that grows into governments breeding a lack of distrust. But I think at the people level, my last time in China, many people in China still wanted to get a picture with an American. There's still a lot of discussion about areas of cooperation. I would rather talk about the period of the 1930s and 40s as a time where the United States was helpful, and not focus on the fact that we didn't get involved soon enough when Japan invaded China. But that's because I like to do things that are productive and positive and not dwell on the negative.
All right, very good, very good. So if I heard you right, you're saying that it is the lack of understanding that caused the difficulties to go further. Am I right?
Lack of respect.
Lack of respect too, yes.
And the lack of respect is created by a lack of understanding
Lack of understanding.
of our differences, because we are different in many respects.
All right, very good. Okay. all
But
right,
if we
yeah.
don't respect the differences,
You're
then
right.
those differences can be focused on the
Sure,
black
you're
dot
right, you're
or
right,
the
you're right,
negative,
you're right, you're right.
as opposed to all of the things that are positive.
All right, all right. So, my dear audience, today we're touching a very big subject. Well, it is a big subject, however, it goes into everybody's life. It is related to everybody's life, especially people like me, like me and my folks over here, wearing a face like this, and also as a proud American. We wish the U.S.-China relationship goes forever in a stronger and a stronger and a stronger way, so that everybody benefit. The worst thing, worst thing, till the end of the day will happen is that they go into kind of war. That's nothing. We could wish nothing worse than that.
I agree with that.
Sure. So let's take a very short moment out. When we come back, we'll continue to develop from the point, the basic point, which is the foundation of this discussion about the lack of understanding that causes the trouble, if we may call them trouble, right? So we'll be right back, my dear friends. Hello, my dear audiences, my dear lovely fellow Americans. Welcome back to the show. Good morning, good day, good evening, good whatever, depending where you are. Here's my sincere greeting to you for coming here to talk to join us in a discussion talking about U.S.-China relationship. Joining me is a friend that I respect all the time. Not only because of the fact he looks a little older than I am, the fact is that he knows quite a lot more than I do.
I have more gray hair.
All right, good, very good. All right, so Mr. Drexel Smith is an energy specialist, which leads him into the field of international economy, especially the area of the most troublesome, like Middle East, namely his energy specialist with oil and other stuff, which of course doesn't prevent him to get into politics. They are so related, right? Don't deny on the political part, but you are in it anyway. Now, back to his point, he's saying that the status quo of U.S.-China relationship, are you taking a positive or a negative view at the status quo? It all depends on the understanding, amount of understanding, right? The problem being caused by the lack of understanding. That is quite a good take. Don't you think so?
Well, I feel strongly. And as I said at the last segment, I think the breeding ground for the understanding is the fact that there is a lack of respect.
Okay.
The United States, up until fairly recently, was populated by people from Western cultures. The United States didn't really understand Eastern culture very much. And I think that the Western culture has a somewhat, and I'm going to use the phrase, as did Kevin Budd, an arrogant attitude that the Western culture is more advanced and better, maybe.
Mm.
Whereas
All right.
I think that with a little bit of understanding, a little bit of study, a little bit of listening instead of talking, you might realize China has a 5,000-year recorded history
Mm. And in the history,
that is fascinating.
in the history, she
many
has
respects.
never invaded anybody,
So,
any other
my
land.
point of view is I can speak so little with my personal understanding uh, of the writings of Confucius and many others. But I think the awareness and the understanding about the world from China is significant. Its contribution to the world is significant. But yet China was fairly closed to the Western world up until fairly recently. And I think Napoleon, even over 200 years ago, talked about his limited knowledge, but he said, China is a sleeping
Sleeping
lion.
lion, yes,
And
that's
when
what
she
he says.
awakens, the world will shake. And I think when the Western world began to engage China, it was so different that they looked at it as something so strange and themselves as superior, not wanting to try to understand the culture. They thought they were better.
It's kind of like, to me, the gauging system, how you measure, right? How you measure. For example, no matter a sleeping lion or sleeping tiger, the concept is that once the tiger or the lion is awakened, they're gonna bite, right? Like that. That's one concept. The other concept, well, no, there is a wild animal anywhere, and well, so they wake up, they sleep, they do whatever, let them do, right?
Maybe
Why
need
you
more
have
lions.
why you have to take the worst take instead of the best take, right? Now the understanding. Speaking of the understanding, you reminded me of a good example. I wonder if I told you or not. Was in 1984, a friend of mine, Marina Tsi. Back then, she was a UCLA student. She was assigned on a job of helping the China delegation of 360 members something attending the World Olympic game, right? And of course, she tried everything, all her best, every bit of her best, to make it better, easier, smoother for the whole thing. Well, including to everybody, day-to-day life, right? First day, they had a reception in the Coliseum, Memorial Coliseum, whereby they met with the officials, right? As a souvenir to that meeting, everybody was given a hat, kind of baseball hat, in color green, right? And they accepted. They sat there, hide on the side. They had the hat on the side, and then when they left, nobody took it. 360 of them sitting on the bench, line up evenly, no touch at all.
Yeah.
Right? So they ask why. Now, here goes Marina Tsi explained. In China, when the culture concerned, wearing a green hat or green cap means very bad. It's very insultive rather than anything else, right? Only you have a cheating wife, you wear a green hat. Oh, everybody laughed. Or you yourself happen to be a woman, though you are a cheating wife, like that kind. So now, take that incident for example. If the media goes out with a big report, writing a big article, those Chinese are so ignorant, right? Are so rude. They left the 360 caps, on the bench without touching it.
Yes.
It's an insult to the host, like that. They might have their take. However, it's 100% mistaken. If they understood these situations, the culture, number one, they will not present a hat in green. And number two, there will be anything else talking about it at all. So a simple case like this would lead 180 degrees in in positions,
Yes.
in directions. Am I right? Is this a good example to apply
No, it's an
to back you up?
Jack, it's an excellent example
Yeah, huh?
because the example points out simple lack of understanding
Could cause a huge problem.
can become an enormous problem.
Yeah,
And,
all right.
as you know, in my youth as a teenager, I was in the U.S. Navy, and I spent a number of years in Asia with my
Why?
experience.
That's why.
And I lived with the Vietnamese.
Did you marry
in
any
it.
Asian girls
no.
or what? No.
Many stole my heart.
Oh, many stole your heart, right? Okay.
But I lived for a year with the Vietnamese sailors.
Ah.
And I was constantly being reminded I was a guest in their country.
All right. Okay.
And I would be smarter to try to learn their culture. I was there to provide training about operating ships,
Okay.
but from a cultural standpoint, I wasn't there to preach, I was there to learn.
All right. Good.
And
good,
some
good.
of their culture was very different from mine. In their culture, when they befriend you, two men would hold hands, and that was acceptable.
Yeah.
That was a sign that you're a really good friend.
Yeah.
Jack, it was very uncomfortable for me as an American
If I hold your
to
hands
hold
like
hands
that.
with another man.
All right. Good.
But I was honored.
But now it's okay. We have the law. You can get married. Okay. Don't worry about anything
Different
of that.
today than
Yeah.
then,
Sure. All right.
back then. And my point is, we'd be a lot better off to stop all this pounding of the chest and to recognize in some cultures the green hat doesn't work.
Okay. All right.
Okay? And I think there is some arrogance. I am an American, I will admit it. There is some arrogance about Americans. I see Americans on travel in the world, and sometimes I'm embarrassed because they bring this attitude, they think they're better than. When I am in China, I have the attitude, I'm a guest. And I'm fascinated to learn more about their life and their culture.
And by doing so, you have introduced the American life, American culture to them.
Well, as you know,
Also.
I spent a number of years working with the Chinese government and industry on nuclear power
All right.
and bringing new nuclear power stations in from a safety standpoint.
Okay.
And I made many trips to China looking at nuclear safety systems. And very important work to make sure that there was a good exchange
And it didn't make you
of
arrogant.
technical information. Okay? Quite the contrary. Okay?
Quite the contrary.
I was very impressed over the knowledge and education. And China today, I think the rest of the world should look at with some level of marvel. I mean, my goodness, they're the largest exporter of the world, the largest trader of the world. They got an enormous history of trading and doing excellent work. And depending on the specific unit of measure, today, either one or two, the world's largest economy. And I think just simply recognizing the population difference between the U.S. and China, they clearly will have the largest economy by most measures. So it's very important.
Once
we
again,
learn.
it's a concept. Yeah, you're saying it's a contract.
Yes.
So, my dear audience, we're really doing some touch base, kind of to the home base, to the issue, which is regarding the United States and the China relationship in the moment with the rise of China, with their mutual approach for betterment of the relationship. So let's take a short moment now. When we come back, we will continue from there on. Hello, my dear friends. Welcome back to the show, my dear, lovely fellow Americans. Welcome back to the discussion about ourselves, about our relationship with China, the awakening line from a deep sleep, if we may call it that way. However, to understand the situation, to understand China, to understand ourselves, to further understand the relationship between two, it's a harder issue. That calls for more hard work, little study, or something, or sometime thinking, right? Joining me in this discussion, I call it a touch base, is my good friend, Mr. Drexel Smith, a wonderful philosopher, wonderful think tanker that I appreciate, I adore so much. I do understand the essence of your statement, right? So in both segments, we're talking about the fact that it is natural, something like that, like your example of the white piece of paper, right? Well, with only one dot on, why would 100% of people focus on the black dot rather than you have 99% of clean, white, open space that you can write anything on? Something like that.
Yes.
I'll give you another example. I'm a learner. You told me you're a learner, right? I'm a learner too. I came here to learn 31 years ago, and I'm still learning. On my first American house visit to my mentor's house, right, I was treated with spaghetti because I was asked to what to eat. I said, "Oh, you know what, spaghetti at that time was only a word to me. I never tasted. Right? I know spaghetti refers to kind of noodles, right? That's it. That's the whole thing." So the wife of my mentor started cooking. While she was cooking, conversation was going on. I didn't sit at the table just wait to be served. I just kind of walking around with them. So I saw the wife would take a measure that has holes on it as a board, is a plastic board with hole on it, serve of 4, serve of 2, serve of 1. 3 holes. And there are even smaller holes. I didn't know what they were for. I asked, right? And she told me, as a matter of factly, if you have a party of 4, hold a bundle of noodles, let go, whatever goes down will be the 4 serve. Aha! I said, we have 3. Your wife, you, and me, right? You, your husband, and me. She said, okay, we have a hole for 2, we have another hole for 1. So that makes a 3. Right? So now another word with a 1 and a 2 and a 4, you can make any number, right? So that thing, I didn't give comment right away because I kind of like reluctant to give comment, to make judgment. Later, I kept on thinking. Until today, I still think. Until today, you go to the supermarket, go to the hardware part, kitchen hardware part, you will still find the measure there that has 4, 2, and 1 serve of that. So does that give an example about how we as Americans measure stuff in front of us?
Yes, but I think my limited knowledge in Asia, the Asian family would have cooked for 4, even though there was only 3 people.
With some intention of leftovers.
Because they didn't want to be insulted for not having enough food.
That's exactly another culture.
And you see, we don't understand that.
That's exactly another culture, yeah.
We don't understand that concept of the honor of the guest and his respected place at the table. And I think it's just one of an endless array of examples where if we stopped and tried to look at, and I think Ronald Reagan, our great president,
Oh, I like him.
said it best in his relationship with trying to get problems solved in our own country. Let's concentrate on the 80% that we can agree on,
rather than 20% of the
then
we would
keep
disagree
focusing
on.
the things that we can disagree.
You're right. You're right.
Even if we agree to disagree, let's focus on, again, we started the segment with all of the white on the paper.
Yeah, with all the white on the paper. In other words, that's a very important issue. It's a very philosophical issue. The agreement to disagree is agreement to.
Exactly.
By logic, right?
Yes. And as two countries continue to promote their own interests, there are certainly going to be periodically issues to where it favors one or the other that you don't have agreement on. Well, you work through those things. In life, not everything is perfect. But it saddens me when I hear some of our policy leaders focus on those things where we're different as opposed to how we build better relationships and better friends. Because I think that's where we need to be. I would welcome China tomorrow with great fair as a very good friend and continue to work on the few areas that we need to. And I think it's important. And it's important to even recognize in the past 150 years, China has good reason to be suspicious. They haven't been treated by the West, and now I'm expanding the U.S. to the West.
Oh, you're right. You're right. I know where we're heading. Yes. Yeah.
I think when the U.S. almost forcibly demanded trade that led to the Opium Wars beginning in the 1800s, to me was just wrong. It was just wrong of how the West behaved. It was wrong for the West to do a number of things. And as Kevin Budd in his presentation points out,
yes.
China had every reason to be unhappy in the 1919 peace accords after World War I, to watch so much of the world be divvied up by people and some of their country be given to Japan.
Yeah.
I mean, these sorts of decisions just breed conflict because they're not natural. The world leaders after World War I did a similar thing that we've talked about on this show of chopping up the Middle East.
Yeah, they divided the Middle East, and everybody gets a piece of chunk. I mean, piece of the whole chunk.
Yeah.
Right. So.
And didn't really respect the tribal and religious differences.
Yeah, you're right.
That are being played out today. So, I think that there's a number of examples where the West hasn't done it right.
All right, good. All right, okay. Of course, there are moments we cannot, or there are instances we shall never forget, which was, one of which was that during the war, anti-Japanese, right? The Americans helped a lot by sending the Flying Tigers, by helping build up the Burma Road, by helping transport thousands of tons for wartime cargoes to China, to Chongqing, to the capital of Sichuan, or so on and so forth.
Yes.
Right. Those are the parts. And also, even during the war, during the Cold War, though, there are times when China and Russia relationship was going through a kind of tension. The United States helped melt that ice a little bit to a certain extent. That's why we're talking about 3 instead of 2, right? That kind of like that. Those are the moments.
I appreciate you saying that, because there are examples to where there has been periods and very significant points in cooperation.
Yeah.
And I would argue that today, the vast majority of the paper is white and we cooperate and we're having an excellent relationship. And yet it worries me that I hear Washington and sometimes Beijing talk about those things where there is a rub.
And also, at the end of the day, you're talking about either your land or your money, right? There are only 2 things you're talking about. End of the day, as nations, between nations, you either talk about your land being invaded or not, right? Taken away or not, or your money, like that kind of like. Now for that, why don't you recommended look into history even go back to the 1800s, during the 50s, even prior to the Opium War, that's prior to 1850. So why can't we go even further? You mentioned in the very beginning about 5,000 years of history, though. Can you find any record or recorded record of China invading any other countries rather than its own territory?
You mean militarily?
Yeah, militarily, yeah.
Well, I think there is some examples of China having tremendous fleets of ships going around the world. Do I have any knowledge or records of a military invasion as we think about it in the modern world? No, I'm not educated in that.
I wasn't informed of that way either, right?
But I think China did make some great fleets.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, there's even discussion of remnants of some of the great fleets on the Sacramento River and other places.
Yeah.
But the world wasn't populated to have conflict.
There are 7 times that China sent during the 1600s, sent 7 fleets outside China water to what? To call for peace, to make friends, and right
And
to
to
come,
establish
to,
trade.
to come with shiploads of silk, of tea, or whatever, right? In exchange of their porcelain or their whatever, and peacemakers. The name is Zheng He, and he had done it 3 times in his
It was
lifetime.
like 1490 period.
1490 to
Yeah,
1600
yeah.
during that period of time, right? So, well, other than that, well, China has never stepped out, right, out of their own territory.
Out of their own
So,
kingdom.
yeah. So, on the contrary, you take England, for example, take UK, for example, take United States, for example, take Russia, for example. None of the major nations, major countries hasn't done anything of invasion, right?
Haven't done anything.
Of invasion, right? Have we invaded Vietnam?
We,
United States, invaded Vietnam.
well, I think we were there to help South Vietnam in that conflict. I'm not sure. Invaded, is that the right word?
Yeah, I take it as the invasion of, okay, agree to disagree. I agree, I disagree on that part. So, have we invaded Iraq?
Well, I think invasion is a hard word, Jack, because I see invasion.
Occupy,
I think,
occupation. Okay, let's take that.
yeah, I see occupation as one where we're trying to control the country. I would argue that in Vietnam, Iraq, those 2 names, in neither case was the United States trying to install.
Well, let's back
its
up
government.
Let's back up one step. China did not even try to help in that same nature. How about that, right?
Well-
It cares about only itself.
Yeah.
It cares about its own self, right? So, once again, of course, we can rest on that. We can pick up another day to talk about the invasion, occupation, or help, or I'm very amenable on that one. So back to the issue though. This layer I'm talking about, you care about your own land, you care about your own money, right? Economically, I mean, when the market is concerned, well, it helps rather than destroys. Am I right?
Well, I make the argument that economically, China is a major power. And I think it's to the near-term and long-term interest of our 2 countries, just pragmatically, that we stay together and cooperate, because there's no benefit to either country to begin a path on conflict. There's absolutely no benefit to either one.
The conflict will bring nothing
I don't see it bringing anything
but
positive.
demolitions. All right, my dear audience, that's another conclusion. Conflicts will bring nothing but demolition. to whatever has already
my
built,
opinion.
right? So, okay, anyway, so my dear friend, let's take a short moment now. When come back, we'll find out what shall happen in September or during September when these two leaders meet. Please, let's give a little guess. All right, so stay with us. Hello, my dear audiences. Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen. It is quite an important issue over the China and U.S. relationship. Well, it is an issue so important that it all depends on how you take it. Suppose there are 100 people. 50% takes on the right-hand side, say negative. 50% takes on the left-hand side, say positive, and then it's only half and half, right? Suppose if you have a situation that over 80 or even 90% of people take the positive side, though, this thing will go positive, right? So joining me is my good friend, Mr. Drexel Smith. And by the way, Mr. Drexel Smith has earned his credentials by getting involved in one of the biggest major nuclear power projects that United States and China joined together, and he represented the United States part, being a senior consultant for that project. And he has the background, and he has lived in the eastern part of the world for quite long to understand what's going on there, right? So in September this year, right after the celebration of the 70th anniversary of winning World War II as a victory for the human race, President Xi Jinping of China will visit here to meet with Barack Obama. Are you optimistic about the meeting? How, please?
Jack, to be clear, I'm not involved
In politics.
or been asked to participate in thinking about or planning that meeting. But if I was asked, I think it's very important for the leaders of these two countries to have very good discussions and to focus on the areas we can agree on. There are differences of views of the two countries. And I really liked the TED Talk by Kevin
Yeah, the
Rudd
TED Talk by Kevin,
from
yes.
Australia, where he talked at some length about solving problems with your mind, the diplomatic approach with the standard framework of conflict resolutions and traditional discussions. And what he was calling for in his talk was maybe a little more personal discussion led by the heart, not by the head.
Yeah, I have the same feeling, yeah.
And I think that brings together some interesting thoughts. He graphically talked about when hands are joined together, they don't have a fist. And I think that when we're working together in a positive way that's constructive, it bothers me that there's a concept to where we can make a policy of fear. Let's don't work with the Chinese on these things because, but it's okay to work with the Russians on those things.
Yeah, why?
And we seem to completely forget that the Russians and the Chinese are working together.
Yeah, right, yeah, so.
So let me understand this picture.
By the logic.
Find the logic where I can't work with China directly, but I do work with Russia, and I knowingly see
yeah.
Russia and China working together but I can't do it directly. And I'm now referring to parts of our space program.
Okay, all right, good.
Okay?
That's a good point. Yeah. That's a very good point, yes.
It makes no sense to me. And I say, the world has agreed that things in space should be about peace. And I think that in many cases, the Chinese have said, we want to be involved, and yet we have made a policy that restricts our NASA from doing anything with China, but it's okay
To deal with Russia.
to deal with Russia. And I'm shaking my head
All right,
saying,
good. Yeah, you're
I
right.
can't connect these dots. They don't make sense.
All right, good.
So to answer your question, if I could author the recommendation, I would welcome the president with open arms from China. I would invite
Wow.
everybody to participate in welcoming what I hope to be one of my very best friends, currently and in the future.
Yeah, you're right.
And I
you're
would
right.
be very clear to talk about the things that we can work on together. And I would more privately have my finest diplomatic people continue to work on things that we're not together on, to find common ground, because those things will eventually have to be worked on.
You're right.
But that would be the Drexel Smith's attitude of going forward, because I think it is incredibly important that we have a good relationship.
What does make sense is that I know there's one Mr. Drexel Smith. However, we're at a time in the epoch, what we call digital, what we call informational, right? So if there are 100 Drexel Smith, if there are 1,000 Drexel, 10,000 Drexel, if there is 1 million or 100 million, things will be better. So our job is to, you and I were talking about, is to proliferate the information, to let the message fly itself, right? Don't you think that's approach? Let the three-way thing deal, funny thing deal their way it is. However, we let the message fly. How about that?
Well, Jack, as you know, I have avoided policy discussions on your show
I know, but everything you talk about is policy.
because I really didn't feel qualified, and I'm here today not as an expert, but as
Yeah.
an American that has had some experiences.
We made some
And
conditions,
I'm happy to share them. And I would say to you, regretfully, September begins a very aggressive, very political, very partisan, very separate presidential election period that will consume our country for the next year. And I believe that so much of what we see and so much of what we hear is not rational. It's posturing to get a particular constituency to support them. And it makes things that go on in Washington a little more unpredictable. So
You're
I
right,
can,
you're right.
I can only be hopeful that rational minds will come forward and to recognize the importance of this relationship and the fact that we both have dreams.
Yeah.
The American dream, I think, is important for many, but the Chinese dream is equally as important.
That probably makes more sense than rather than not, because you're talking about election or re-election, whatever. Every time you elect a new hand, you're talking about a change,
Well,
right? A change of taste, a change of take, and then another 4 years. 4 years is nothing when compared to history, and then there's another one. There's another one, on and on and on, until we pick up the right one, and things will get going. In the meantime, well, we get what we need.
but Jack, the messages are not so hard. Number one, don't give green hats.
Oh yeah, sure. Number
Okay.
2 is about the noodles.
Number two, make noodles for 4.
Make noodles for 4 instead of 3.
Have the extra. treat your guests like you want to be treated.
All right. Good.
That's the attitude that we need to be bringing forward.
I see. Very good.
You know, just like in our personal relationships, when things don't go well, there's always some conflict resolution, even if it brings
There are different options.
even if it brings the ultimate argument of a fight. I just think that those paths are so unproductive. And we're continuing to see conflicts throughout the world. And there is enough bad people in the world that both China and the U.S. should have a mutual vested interest to be against.
All right.
I'm
good.
sorry, North Korea
Oh
and the
yeah.
leadership there
Oh
is
yeah. Yeah.
simply
All right.
nuts.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
And we have a number of equally not good people in a position of leadership throughout Africa.
We have common confrontations.
And we should be working on those things,
Very good.
standing together.
You're right. You're right. All right, my dear audience, we're going over time, but yet I enjoy every minute of the discussion, especially those strong statements made by my good friend Drexel Smith. And how about if I wrap this whole thing up with two of your slogans? Number one, no more green hat. Number two, always serve 4 to 3, right?
There
that
you
will
go.
make a lot of room.
There you
All
go.
right. No more green hat. Always serve 4 for 3. All right, my dear audiences. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for coming over, my dear friend.